Hello. Welcome. Today I am here with Grace. We are talking all about communication. I am super excited for this subject because I think this is something that all humans have issues with. I don't care what it is. It could be work, it could be relationships, it could be our kids. Somewhere in life, we're having some troubles with the communication and the impact that we are making on our world. So I'm super excited to have this conversation. This is going to be so much fun. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sabrina Victoria. I am the host here at Her Talk Show. If you have not already subscribed, and now is the day to subscribe. These podcasts are guaranteed to have you thinking differently about life and business. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
If you are listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you drop into the comments and say hello so we can send you some love. Listen, we have had over 600 women grace this stage. We are adding another one to the list today. Grace is an Asian American speech language pathologist. Oh, yes. Empowers conflict-phobic and introverted women with 23 plus years of expertise, resolving communication breakdowns, passionate about fostering harmony, understanding, and impact in all aspects of life through communication. She guides clients to swift and effective resolutions, ensuring support from partners, peers, work associates, and families by embracing their unique communication styles. Grace believes solutions exist for every communication challenge. Girl, yes to all of that. I feel like my favorite part is, let me wait, hang on one second. There was one part where I was like, dang, that's good. Swift. I love that. She guides clients to swift and effective solutions, because I feel like sometimes when we decide to speak up or communicate, we feel as if it's not going to be swift. It's going to elongate the conversation, which nobody's got time for that. We ain't got time for that. It's a good word.
Hello, Sabrina. Thank you for that warm welcome, and thank you for allowing me to be on your show today. It's a great honor and opportunity to be here with you today, Sabrina. So thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yes, 100%. So how did you get into, before we jump into all the goodness, how did you get into communication?
Oh my goodness. Well, communication has been part of my life from childhood all the way to the present time. You know, I grew up with my Asian parents, and, you know, they brought with them their Asian culture. So while I was at school, you know, I'm raised in the US and Canada, and, you know, I go to school and the teachers are like saying, yes, you know, stand up for yourself. It's okay to be assertive. Tell us what you want. Tell us what you like, and everything. And I was like, you know, dream big. And I was like, okay. And I share it. I go home and I say, hey, Mom, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And Mom is like, no, no. You know, so what I learned was, like, it was okay in the Western culture where my teachers in here, you know, they were like supportive and they were like saying, yes, it's okay to be assertive. Not the same case with my parents. Asian culture, they already had a plan. They already had an idea, like, you know, go to be a doctor or, you know, a scientist, engineer, something that, you know, where you have a great profession and you make money. So, you know, I had to learn about the different rules, so to speak, for the Western culture versus the Asian culture. And then I had to figure out how to bridge that differences so that I was surviving, and not just surviving. Initially, it was just to feel that way, but then to thrive in the Western culture as well as thriving in my Asian culture with my parents. So I really had to learn how to communicate both that was well received. I want to say where it was, I felt empowered in the Western culture as well as feeling empowered in the Asian culture.
Yeah. I would love for you to talk a little bit about this well received, because I know that there are so many individuals watching live and on the replay right now that are thinking of their own spouse, kids, moms, dads, uncles, grandma, grandpa, um, where there's lots of hesitation because they are fearful of it not being well received. So, what's the trick?
Right. So it's understanding communication, right? A lot of times we think of communication as it's just an exchange of words, right? You're just a message and the person is just receiving the message. Well, what I learned was, certain tones of voice would be okay, and certain body language and facial expressions will be okay. And in some, it wasn't. So it was learning, like, you really have to understand communication beyond just saying, okay, I'm exchanging information here. You almost have to understand communication as an energy, because everything has energy, right? So you have to understand communication as an energy and how you put forth that energy so that it comes through your tone of voice, your body language, your facial expressions, and as well as the words you're using, because sometimes the words you're using or that tone of voice can be triggering for some people. Classic example, in the Western culture, it's okay to say, I want X, Y, and Z, right? And you can be not say forceful, but you can, use a strong tone of voice, that confident tone of voice, and say, I want this, right? In the Asian culture, that would appear to be somewhat aggressive. Like, what do you mean you want X, Y, and Z? So in the Asian culture, it's not so much like you want to be timid, but you would just say, I feel like I would like X, Y, and Z. So, you still can get what you want, but you have to change it a little bit. And
Makes
some of the
sense.
wordings as well.
What was the word that you said? Learn to communicate beyond
Learn to
the
communicate beyond just understanding the words, like beyond just saying communication is exchange of words. You have to understand communication is energy, right? There's energy all around us. Everything has energy, and how you put forth in your communication, there's energy to it, and how you put the energy is behind your tone of voice, your body language, the words you speak. Words in general are neutral. However, because of experiences, culture, certain words can be uplifting to some people, while that same word can be triggering to others.
Yes. Yeah, this is one thing that I talk about a lot as far as words being neutral. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Because this was a new concept for me, and I'm sure it's a new concept to a handful of people listening.
Right. So if you think about the word decide, right? A lot of the time, sometimes that word decide can actually be a triggering word for some people, where they feel stuck, like they don't know how to decide, or they can't make a decision. Because sometimes that word decide means, oh my gosh, it's final. Like, what
Mm.
happened if I decide wrong? What happened if I decide and it's a mistake? Then what? So that word decide can be triggering sometimes, just because how they might interpret it and perceive it as something being final. And so what I would say is, if that would be the case, then choose a different word. Perhaps the word choose, right? Because with choose, it feels more open. Because if you choose wrong, you know that there's always other choices that can come up, and you might feel more open with it. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So the word itself, decide and choose, they mean the same thing, right? You're
Yeah.
going to either decide on something or choose something, but the energy that we put behind those words and our feeling and our experiences may either be triggering or it could be uplifting. So for some people, decide is, oh, I can decide. Yeah, I know exactly what I want. I know the decision I'm going to make. Where for some people, that word could be triggering, and so they need the word choose, because the choose, that word feels more open to them. So just find the word that really resonates with you.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And then as far as words being neutral and really recognizing that there are no good words, bad words, better words, different, they're all just words.
Correct. They're just words, but it's our experiences, it's our personality, it's our perhaps the culture. We then start to put some meaning behind those words, right? Then we start to put some energy behind those words. And so when we say a certain word or we hear a certain word, it can set us off. You're having a conversation with someone, right? And then somebody just happens to say a XYZ word. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, you want to say that again? Like,
Mm,
why did you say that, right? All of a sudden the conversation might pivot because whatever word that was said all of a sudden became that trigger word for that person.
yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And what a very great example too that so many of us could really sit on and realize. We have a comment here from one of our listeners. Can you read that out loud, Grace?
It says, yes, Grace, words can be triggering, and we get to choose. For me, discipline feels harsh, where devotion to self feels softer and more nurturing. Yes, exactly.
For sure. I know that you play a lot with human design.
Yes. So, if I may, before I jump into the human design, let me just speak about the um, communication styles, because then I'm going to tie in to the human design.
I love that.
So, you know, each of us has our own personality, right? And our personality comes from within us, it comes from our environment, it comes from our experiences, all of that. And so what happens is that with that, we all have different personalities that show up. So for some of us, we are what I like to call fireballs, right? For some people, the reason I say fireballs is because they're so motivated, they're so passionate, and they're like, I want to help you get the results. And they're so passionate in helping you to get the results, or wanting to share with you what they're interested in and their passion. So for me, I feel like they're little fireballs. And then you got the nurturers, the ones that are very supportive, likes to provide guidance, show you like step to step of what to do. And then you have like the diplomatic, the ones that are willing to share their opinions, ideas, thoughts, and also realize that everyone has his or her own thoughts and opinions. And so they're willing to listen, and they are willing to say, I'm just sharing my thoughts, but absolutely, you have your thoughts, and I'm good with that. I just want us to share so we have a balance. And then you got the humorous. And with the humorous, what happens is a lot of times they may appear to be a little bit insensitive, because what happens is when the conversation gets really deep and it gets really heavy, they can feel a little bit discomfort. So they might throw in a little bit of a joke or a comment to try to help to lighten up the mood. But if not done correctly, then they can appear to be insensitive.
Mm,
So with
definitely.
those four personalities that that I feel that I've encountered with the people that I've worked with, then there's the human design, right? So you got the reflectors, the projectors, the manifesting generators, the generators, and the manifestors. So each of these types have their own unique way of problem solving or making decisions. For the manifesting generator, the response will be, they're not to initiate, right? They have to wait to be invited to respond. Well, what happens if you're a nurturer and you love to, give advice and you want to give your opinion because you want to help that person out, but it's not well received? And then you start to think, geez, I'm trying to be helpful here. I want to help this person, and because I see exactly what this person should be doing, and this person's not receptive, and it can feel very frustrating. Well, see, what happened was the nurturer is a manifesting generator. So they're not a manifester. So they can't initiate. So when they initiate the advice or opinion, it's not well received. So what they should do then is wait for the invitation. Wait for the person to come and say, hey, I'm having a problem here. Do you have an advice? Do you have an opinion that you can share with me? And at that moment, when the nurturer then, as a manifestor generator, then shares his or her opinions, it's going to be well received because they had actually waited for the invitation to come.
Very interesting. How does somebody figure all of this out?
So you can actually, there are websites where you can do a human design report, and then they'll tell you like your type, and they'll tell you, your frustrations and your authority and your strategy. So there's just a very simple information that you can find out.
And why is this important? Why should we know this?
Well, here's the thing. Like I mentioned, if you are a nurturer, right, and you want to share your advice or share your opinion and it's not well received, well, why is that? Because if you are a manifestor nurturer and you initiated and your advice or opinion, and it's well received, because as a manifestor, that's what they do. They can initiate, not a problem. But as a manifesting generator, you have to wait to respond. So if you're a nurturer, and you're a manifesting generator, you need to wait to respond. So a lot of the times, if you're not going according to your human design and you're just like, well, I'm this way and I want to be, showing people how to get results or how to, share with them my passion and what have you, and it's not well received, well, is it because you're not going with the flow of your human design?
So when you're going against your own human design, is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes, correct. So if you're going against your own human design, and you're just going with just your communication styles, then there's a disconnect. There's not an alignment. And then this is where you're like, this is my personality, but it's not really working with me with my human design part for the communication. And so there's a misalignment. And then when there's a misalignment, then what do? Right? Then you start to feel frustrated and you start to feel, well, why isn't that person, listening to me? Or why didn't that person receive my information or wasn't being open to receiving my information?
Yeah. So can someone change their human design or no? It just is what it is. Can you alter it?
No. So your human design is based on your date of birth, your place of birth, and your time of birth. So it's already who you are when you came into this world. So, nobody can change their human design. What you can do, though, is know your human design and work with your human design.
Got it. That totally makes sense. 100%. I know you talk a lot about communication. You kind of mentioned this in the beginning of the podcast. You were talking about how communication is energy. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Right. So right now, like just everybody that you've had on your podcast, Sabrina, right? You have talked to so many wonderful women, and I'm sure each person that you've talked to, you might come with a different bit of energy with them, right? In some aspect, if depending upon the discussion and the body language and the personality of the person, right? You get a certain vibe, you get a certain energy from that person. And then you're just kind of going with it, with the flow. So each person that you're talked to, even if for the listeners, they're going to have a certain different feeling or certain different vibe of that energy of the communication. Even when you're having a conversation and having like a back and forth, it's going to feel a little bit different with each person.
Wow, this is so interesting. Yeah, I've never really thought of it that way, as far as they're all just saying words,
But
right?
but then again, it's like, how are they presenting, like, their body language? Are they leaning forward? Like, when you're saying something and, that they have, maybe one of your speakers said something and you're like going, wow, you may be leaning forward, and that just promotes the speaker to even want to share more, right? Or,
Yeah.
if you're like, kind of going, like a little bit of a look like, I'm a little bit confused about that, right? Then we kind of read through that and say, oh, maybe I needed to clarify something.
Yes, absolutely. So it's not just words, like you were saying, it goes beyond understanding the words, it is energy. Yeah, because every single person that I have had on speaks English. So
Right.
they're all saying words, but the energetic vibe that is given during each one is completely different.
Right. Because they're
Wow.
either a body language, they're leaning in, right?
Yeah.
Or they have a smile on their face, or if they're discussing something really important or serious, yeah, like their facial expression is going to change and their body language would change. So it's really, not just words, because also think about this. When the person is sharing their story or sharing the information, right, you're hearing the words, but as well as you're getting the feeling of what this person is actually sharing with you or with the audience.
Mm, absolutely. So interesting. I feel like this is something that we all know, but something that none of us really think about. We do think that, like, just as long as you say the words, it should be received, but that's not true. It's more than the words.
Right.
So true.
A lot of the times we always say, well, this person didn't hear me, right? Or how about, that's not what I said, you know? But the thing is that the person just, sometimes what happens is if there's a communication breakdown, sometimes it has to do with how the person is perceiving the information. The person might have said something, but the person interpreted it a different way because they heard certain words and they then felt the energy of those words in a different way. And so when they repeat it back, or they said, well, you said X, Y, and Z, and the person goes, that's not what I said.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So, so true. So, using our human design, using our unique communication style, all of that combined can create a more harmonious communication that makes an impact in our family and our work environment. So I'm
Yeah.
understanding it from the first person, me, but how do I go about understanding who I'm talking to and how they're going to interpret it?
Right. So what happens is, we have centers, right? We have the head center, the third eye center, the throat center, the heart, and then there's the G center, the will, the heart. There's the spleen, the root. all that. So what happens is in human design, we have what we call open centers and closed centers. So with the open centers, a lot of the times, if you are talking to somebody and you might not know that other person's human design, and that's okay. Because what happens is a lot of times if with your own center, if you have that open center, then a lot of times that area of where you're communicating is going to be inconsistent. So a lot of the times if that person has a closed center, in other words, they have the where the center is consistent, sometimes you're going to be communicating from their closed centers. And so a classic example is I met somebody who's a reflector, and reflectors, all their centers are opened. All right. And so I have a closed throat center. So for me, guess what? I'm in communication. Well, it fits because, as a throat center being closed, I'm very consistent with my communication. So when the reflector and I met, the reflector used almost the same phrases and words that I used. Because I'm always like the one that says, oh, I totally get it. If somebody says to me, I can't make it, I have something going on, I would say, hey, I totally get it. Life happens. And something had happened and I told her I apologize. And she said it, not realizing, she just said back to me like, hey, I totally get it. And I'm like going, wow, she's just throwing, as a reflector, she's just reflecting back how I would normally communicate. Now, if I didn't understand my human design and, I'm like, I could, and she had said something else back to me that I wasn't ready to see, it might then trigger me, right? If, all of a sudden she says something to me that I wasn't ready to hear, then I would be like going, oh boy, she's really rude. How dare she say X, Y, and Z back to me? But not realizing she actually just reflected back to me what I was actually thinking and feeling.
Wow, so interesting. But how do you know she's a reflector?
Well, because I did her chart.
No, but in general in life.
So, but if I hadn't done her chart, right, and I just said, okay, she reflected back something that I've said, and if it triggered me, that means I wasn't aligned to my throat center, right? If my throat center was open and she threw something back at me that I wasn't ready to hear, then I would say, oh, why am I triggered here? Why is there a misalignment? Is it because that I wasn't ready to have this attention on me? Like I wasn't ready to address this issue. She brought attention to something I wasn't ready to address yet.
So interesting. I know that you talk about the acronym PEACE.
Yes. So going back to the energy of words and words being neutral, right? However, everything has energy. And a lot of times when we think about peace, right, peace of mind and everything, and people are like going, okay, well, I meditate. And when I meditate, I have that peace of mind. But when I go out and do my job or do some other things, I no longer have that peace of mind, right? So it's basically understanding the word peace of mind at an energetic level beyond the typical dictionary meaning. So for me, for peace, how I view it is prioritize. A lot of the times we don't feel the peace is because we're busy taking care of everything else, or we feel like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. I don't even know where to start. Or we start on something, it's like, oh, this is more important. And so just prioritize 2 to 3 tasks that need to be done first. And make sure you also prioritize yourself. Right? You're so busy. We're all as women tend to be taking care of everybody else and taking care of other things that we sometimes forget to take care of ourselves. So make sure you also prioritize yourself.
Absolutely.
And then E, be willing to evolve, right? Life happens, mistakes happen, things don't work out. Don't beat yourself up. Be real just realize mistakes happen and be willing to evolve from it, learn from it. Right? So just let go, evolve. And then A, I would say awareness, right? Oh, be aware of your words, be aware of your actions when you're in that frazzled mode. What are you doing? Are you like, struggling and just, being forceful with things? You're trying to push against, the resistance, where instead of going with the flow, or are you like snapping at people? Are you grabbing that snack? Whatever it is, or it's negative thoughts, just be aware, right? And then that way you can take a pause. And then C for me is choose. Again, even when you feel like you're stuck, right? You're stuck in a job you don't like, or stuck with a situation and you feel like you can't get out of it. Well, know that you have a choice. You can choose to continue to think that you're stuck, or you can choose to say, okay, perhaps there's something good that I can see, or perhaps there's something good that you can do for yourself, right? Maybe a little bit of self-care to give yourself a little reward, right? So you can choose not being stuck. And then E, when you feel empowered, then you're going to be willing to empower others and show others how to empower and show others how they can empower themselves.
Beautiful. And then what can this acronym do for us? How does this help us?
Well, so again, if you want that peace of mind, then you can just think about, okay, well, why am I not in a peace of mind? Because you might be feeling like I'm taking care of everybody else. When is it going to be my turn? So then look in your calendar, or, see where you can have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to yourself, right? You just, where you can just take a breather. Yeah. So, or it might be even just, I need to pivot a bit. I just I have all the stuff I need to do, but for right now, I'm just going to pivot for 2 minutes just so I can take some deep breaths, calm myself.
Yeah.
And then, like I say, with mistakes happen, again, a lot of times we beat ourselves up, right? How many times we say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, wow. I wasn't really smart in doing that or making that decision. Right. So we are our own best friends. So we don't need to beat ourselves up. We can just say, hey, okay, I learned a lesson here. I know what not to do next time. All right, great. I'm evolving. All right, this is good. I'm evolving and going to do better. Right?
Yeah. As far as communication within our home environment, specifically with our partners, talking about human design, talking about our communication style, is this something that you recommend for partners to really find out and hone in on what each other's are?
I would, yes, because I'll use me as an example. My husband is a humorous communicator. That's his style, and he's a generator. But he has an open heart, where I have a closed heart. And as any woman know, when you're starting off your business as an entrepreneur and all this other stuff, there's a lot of learning curves, right?
Yeah.
So when I was first starting out, trying to find clients and what have you, my husband would say, okay, when are you going to get some clients? When are you going to start making it a business and not a hobby? And it broke me, right? And I'm like going, what? I'm working so hard and what have you. Was like, what? And then what I realized from the human design was he was actually voicing what I was feeling in my heart. That I was trying to prove to myself that I will be a successful entrepreneur, but it wasn't happening yet. because it takes time, right? It wasn't happening yet. And he gave it a voice that I wasn't ready to acknowledge. So here I thought it was coming from him. Like he was, the one that was saying all this stuff to me, like it was coming from him. But what I realized, it wasn't. It was actually coming from me, and he was giving it a voice.
This actually reminds me, or what are your thoughts on this as far as when we misinterpret words? Could that be a similar thing where somebody says something a certain way, we interpret it differently than what they actually said? Is that kind of the same thing where we're...
Yes, because again, they're saying a word that resonates with them, but not necessarily with us, right? So like my husband will say a word and sometimes it triggered me. And I would be like going, because I tend to resonate with the word support, right? But he resonated with the word service. So he was like going, well, when are you going to provide service to, your clients and everything? And I'm like, wait, it's not a service. I'm trying to provide support to my clients. So so what I realized was, and again, it's energy, right? It's our own personality. It's from our own experiences. It's all coming from our own self, our background. And then that we give the meaning, we give the feeling to that word. So, I mean, I'm my background is speech language pathologist, and I worked in the hospitals. And of course, hospitals, they always talk about providing services to the patient, And I was like going, yes, I understand providing services to the patient, but the patient is a patient, and I'm here to help the patient. I don't see the patient as a number or as money, And so a lot of the times it was just the word service felt more so like a business transaction than actually a personal way of interacting and being with that person and helping that person. So I really started not liking the word service, because to me, it felt very much of a business transaction, which is not what I like.
Very interesting.
I wanted to see it as a service, as a support to the person. So when my husband used that word service, I know exactly where he's coming from, of course, right? However, for me, that word became so triggering for me just because of my experience, my feeling towards it, all of that. And so when he uses that word, I swap it out and say, okay, what he really means is to provide support. And then that helps me then to say, okay, I can still stay engaged in the conversation with my husband.
Yeah. So are we supposed to be, when we're in conversation with people, just like all the time in conversation with people, are we supposed to be interpreting these words or this communication through energy or through the context of the words? Like, what is more beneficial?
Well, I would say from the energy, right? Because when you get the energy, you get the feeling. And so, because when you're just saying the words, right, the words are there, but then everybody has a different meaning of the words. But when you have the feeling, you can kind of feel what that person means of that word.
Definitely makes sense. 100%. Well, we have a ton of people watching live right now. So obviously they're resonating with all the goodness that you are sharing. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what specifically you do and who should be reaching out to you. Who do you help?
So I help any woman who are introverted, people pleasers, the ones that are afraid of conflicts, and they want to be able to have that communication with their partner, whether it be their children, their spouse, the coworker, a friend, parent, siblings, whoever it is, that if you find it very difficult to communicate your thoughts, feelings, and wants, Know that you can. You just have to figure out, how to communicate. And one of the ways is using your human design, knowing your communication styles, and then just understanding the energy of the communication.
So are we supposed to just be going up to random people like our bosses and telling them to take the human design quiz?
No, you don't need to do that. No. So say, for example, you are having a difficult time talking to your boss, right? And a lot of the times what happens is there are some open centers that I had mentioned, right? So if say your boss or a work colleague gives you a compliment, right? And says, "Oh, you're doing a great job." And all of a sudden you're put off by that compliment. You know that person is being nice, but perhaps you feel like it's not sincere, either because of their tone of voice, or if they are being sincere, but you feel like, well, they don't really know me. I perhaps just kind of started the job or something. It might be because you have you have an open heart center where you might feel like you haven't proven to yourself yet of that compliment that was given to you. So a lot of the times, if something makes you feel that you're resistant to it, it might be because there is a center that is open for you and it's setting something off where you don't feel an alignment.
When you're saying open and closed, can you give us a visual of what that specifically means? Because when I think of open, like you're saying open, and I'm
Yeah,
actually viewing it as the opposite because of
sure.
what it is. So can you give us a visual for that?
Yeah. So on the human design, they have colors, right? You have like your chakra colors, right? You have like the crown that is white, and then you have like the third eye that is like purple, and then the throat chakra is blue, and so on and so forth, right? On the human design, there's also colors, and some of the centers are colored in like yellow or red or orange, and then um, when it's colored in, that means that it is closed, which means you're consistent with how you act and how you are being with that center. When all of the centers are white, which means that all of the centers are not colored in, everything is white. That means that it's all opened, right? And so when the center is opened, then what happens is you're not consistent all the time around that center. Sometimes you can handle it and sometimes you can't. And that might be because of who you are with.
Okay, so if I'm thinking of like submarine doors, the door is closed, so you can see the color of the door is orange,
Yep.
which means you're good. You're like secure in yourself, your authenticity, the way that you're showing up, the way that you're communicating, the way that you're taking on other people's words. But then if it's open and it's white, then that means that we don't have a handle on anything. We're whimsical. We're just kind of like no
Right.
rules and we don't know what's going on. There's no security.
Right. So what happens is there are exploratory questions, and because of the time, I don't, wanted to have all those exploratory questions. Otherwise, we'll be here all the time, or we'll be here
Yeah.
all hours, right, of the day.
Yeah.
So with the closed center, you pretty much like it's not okay. So I don't want to make sure that everybody understands. There is nothing wrong with having an open center, and there's no, just because you have a closed center, because it is more consistent, doesn't mean that it's good or bad. All right.
Okay.
Having all these open and closed centers doesn't mean that it's good or bad. What it
Okay.
just means is that when you have a closed center, you just have more of that consistency. It's not like sometimes you communicate a certain way. Like I have a throat, my throat center is closed, which means it's blue. And so I have a consistent way of communicating. So it's not like sometimes I'm going to communicate this way, where sometimes I might feel really, really comfortable in saying what I want to say. Right. And then sometimes all of a sudden, depending upon who I'm with, like a boss or somebody, all of a sudden, I don't know how to communicate. I don't know, like, I feel, I might, if I had an open center, throat center, person with an open throat center might all of a sudden, like in certain situations, might go, I can't say that. I'm going to get in trouble. Or in some situations, they can let it fly. They can just tell that person X, Y, and Z, and sometimes they might find like, hey, I can do a presentation. Okay. And then all of a sudden, in some situations, they're wanting to share something. And then they feel like, oh, I don't know what I can share or how to do it. So there's that inconsistency if you have an open throat center.
Beautiful. Okay. I totally, totally get it. That's awesome. I love this. Well, very, very interesting. Where can people find you? Social media, websites?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn under, Grace CW Liu. I'm on Facebook. You can find me at gracesolutions.com. Yeah, so those are two of my platforms I'm usually at.
Great. And then where do you recommend individuals to take this quiz?
So I have a free communication style quiz, so you can find out your communication style, and you can find it at gracesolutions.com.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Grace, for being here. This was absolutely a delight. I took a ton of notes, which I always appreciate doing. I love it when I can learn things on this podcast along with all of our listeners also. To those of you listening live or on the replay, if you are resonating or you resonated with Grace and all the goodness that she shared today, make sure to check out her website at gracesolutions.com. You can see the clear print or how that's written out right below her face on the screen here. It's also in a clickable link in the description below, wherever you are watching us at. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. Where do you hang out on social media the most again? What was it?
Facebook, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Facebook and LinkedIn. I remembered LinkedIn, but I didn't remember. So Facebook and LinkedIn is where she is hanging out the most. Any closing thoughts, Grace, as we wrap up here?
Yes. So remember, have fun with communication, right? Because you're going to come across obstacles, you're going to come across situations, but hey, just have fun with it, right? Just treat it as a game, that, you come across, because the more you can have fun with it, then you're going to start to feel the flow of it. So, and just remember, amazing solutions are everywhere with clear communication.
Yes. And practice, right? Because you're kind of telling people to practice, play with it, practice. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't be nervous.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, get some play and some practice in. Well, this has been great. Thank you for another incredible episode of Her Talk Show with Grace, sharing her wisdom and inspiring us all. To our dedicated listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end here. Remember to follow, like, and share. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. I invite you to join this amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to have uplifting conversations just like this one every step of the way. Until